The twin suns of Xenon rose gently over the alien landscape, casting soft golden light across the sprawling fields and crystalline trees. The air was fresh, filled with the sweet scent of blooming alien flowers and the hum of strange insects flitting through the shimmering plants. Life on Xenon had settled into a peaceful rhythm since humans had made the planet their home, living side by side with the native Xenians. Both species had found harmony, coexisting in a world that felt like a fresh start after the destruction of Earth. In the distance, a school sat on the outskirts of a Xenian city. Its architecture was distinctly alien, with curving organic shapes made of bioluminescent materials that shimmered in the morning light. The school was bustling with activity. Xenian children, with their iridescent skin and bright eyes, ran and played in the schoolyard, laughing and chasing each other under the watchful eyes of their teachers. Inside, others sat at their desks, listening attentively as holographic lessons unfolded before them. Everything seemed perfect, a typical day of learning and play for the young Xenians. Not far from the school, a group of dogs, Max, Bella, Duke, Coco, and Shadow, strolled across the fields on their morning walk. They had become more than just pets after the implant that had given them the ability to think critically and communicate had taken hold. These dogs were sharp, capable of understanding complex problems and working together in ways that had once been unthinkable. Max, the leader of the group, walked ahead, his sleek black and tan fur glinting in the sunlight. His amber eyes scanned the horizon, always alert, always prepared for the unexpected. Bella, the golden retriever with soft golden fur, trotted beside him, her tail wagging lazily as she enjoyed the warm morning. Duke, the muscular boxer, strutted confidently behind them, his broad chest puffed out as if always ready for a challenge. Coco, the elegant greyhound, and Shadow, the silent and observant Doberman, brought up the rear, their sleek forms moving gracefully through the soft blue-green grass. For the dogs, this was just another peaceful day on Xenon, but in the back of their minds, they were always ready for anything. Suddenly, Max stopped in his tracks, his ears perking up, his body tensing. Bella noticed the change immediately, her happy expression fading as she turned to Max. "What is it?" she asked, though she already knew that something wasn't right. Max didn't respond at first, his sharp eyes focused on the distant sky. Then, without warning, a fiery streak tore across the heavens, heading straight for the alien school. Time seemed to slow as the meteorite hurtled toward the school. The dogs watched, frozen in place, as the fiery object grew larger and larger, leaving a trail of smoke and fire in its wake. In an instant, the peaceful morning shattered. The meteorite hit the school with a deafening explosion, sending a shockwave through the ground that the dogs could feel even from their distance. Debris flew into the air as the building crumbled under the force of the impact, the once beautiful structure now a ruin of twisted metal and crumbling stone. A plume of black smoke began to rise, and moments later, flames erupted from the wreckage. Panic filled the air. Alien students screamed, some trapped inside the collapsing building, others scattered in confusion across the grounds. Teachers ran, trying to pull children from the danger zone, but the fire was spreading quickly, and the collapsing walls made rescue difficult. The alien school, once a place of learning and laughter, had become a death trap. Max's mind raced. There were no humans or Xenians nearby who could help. Not yet. The rescue teams were miles away in the city, and by the time they arrived, it could be too late. "We have to go now," Max said, his voice calm but urgent. Without hesitation, the dogs sprang into action, running toward the school as fast as their legs could carry them. Max led the way, his heart pounding in his chest, his mind already formulating a plan. Behind him, Bella, Duke, Coco, and Shadow followed, their faces set in determination. This wasn't the first time they had worked together, and it wouldn't be the last. But today, lives were at stake. As they approached the school, the scene was worse than they had feared. The front half of the building had collapsed, trapping students and teachers inside. Flames licked at the walls, sending thick plumes of smoke into the air. The air was filled with the sound of screaming and crying as Xenians struggled to escape the wreckage. Max quickly assessed the situation. "We need to get the students out first. Bella, take Duke and start pulling away the debris near the entrance. Coco, you and Shadow find a way around the back and see if there's anyone trapped there." The dogs didn't question his orders. They trusted Max's judgment and knew that time was of the essence. Bella and Duke rushed to the front of the building, where several students were trapped beneath large pieces of debris. Without wasting a second, Bella began to dig through the rubble, her powerful paws tearing at the debris, while Duke used his muscular frame to push large pieces of metal out of the way. The trapped students, their iridescent skin glowing faintly in the dim light, looked up in surprise as the dogs worked furiously to free them. The Xenians had never imagined that dogs, creatures once thought to be simple companions, could perform such heroic acts. "Hang in there," Bella said gently, as she carefully pulled a small alien child from the wreckage. The child, shaken but alive, stared up at her in awe. Meanwhile, Max rushed inside the burning building, his keen sense of smell guiding him toward a group of trapped students huddled in a corner. The smoke was thick, making it difficult to see, but Max's instincts took over. He pushed through the debris, using his powerful body to clear a path. "Follow me," he barked to the students who were too terrified to move. They hesitated for a moment, but then, trusting the dog's command, they followed Max through the smoke and fire. One by one, he led them out of the crumbling building, guiding them to safety where Bella and Duke were waiting to take over. In the back of the school, Coco and Shadow were making progress as well. They had found several students trapped under a fallen beam, their teacher struggling to free them. Without a word, Shadow leaped into action, using his powerful jaws to lift the beam just enough for Coco to pull the students free. The teacher, a tall Xenian with glowing purple skin, looked at the dogs in astonishment. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "You saved them." Coco simply nodded, her heart racing, but there was no time for gratitude yet. The building was still burning, and there were still students inside. As the minutes ticked by, the dogs worked tirelessly, pulling students and teachers from the wreckage, guiding them to safety, and doing everything they could to prevent casualties. The heat from the fire was intense, and the smoke made it difficult to breathe, but they didn't stop. By the time the Xenian rescue teams arrived, the dogs had already saved every student and teacher trapped inside the school. There were injuries, of course. Some of the students had cuts and bruises, and a few were suffering from smoke inhalation, but thanks to the dogs there were no fatalities. The building collapsed completely just as the last student was pulled to safety. Flames consumed the structure, but everyone was already out. The Xenian rescue team arrived on the scene, but they could only stand in awe as they realized what had happened. The dogs, Max, Bella, Duke, Coco, and Shadow, had saved the day. As the last remnants of the alien school crumbled under the weight of the fire, the dogs stood by, panting from exhaustion but their eyes alert, watching over the rescued Xenian students and teachers. The rescue teams, now fully aware of the situation, rushed to tend to the injured, carrying alien children and adults to safety, but their eyes often drifted back to the dogs in awe and disbelief. In all their years of serving the Xenian people, they had never seen anything like it. Dogs not just helping, but leading a rescue operation. Nearby, the students who had been saved by Max and his group sat huddled together, shaking but alive. Teachers gathered with them, checking to ensure that no one was left behind. Though injured and bruised, there was no sign of panic. Instead, a sense of calm and relief washed over the group, as if the presence of the dogs alone had been enough to reassure them that they would be okay. The head of the rescue team, a tall Xenian with deep green skin and eyes that glowed like the stars, approached the group of dogs. His expression was one of awe and gratitude. He knelt down in front of Max, looking him directly in the eye, as if he knew that this dog was not just a regular pet, but something much more. "You saved them," the Xenian leader said softly, his voice filled with emotion. His glowing eyes swept across the other dogs, Bella, who stood with her tail wagging slightly but cautiously, Duke, who puffed out his chest, still on alert, and Coco and Shadow, who had taken positions at the edges of the crowd, watching for any signs of danger. Max nodded slightly, his sharp amber eyes conveying understanding. It was what needed to be done, he seemed to say without words, his posture calm but authoritative. The Xenian leader stood and turned to address the other members of the rescue team. "These dogs, they saved all of the students and teachers before we even arrived," he announced. The entire team turned to look at the group of 5 dogs, stunned by what they were hearing. The Xenian students, many of whom had been weeping in shock just moments before, now gathered around the dogs, their faces filled with wonder. A young Xenian girl with bright blue skin and wide glowing eyes approached Bella, hesitantly reaching out to pet her. Bella wagged her tail and leaned into the touch, offering comfort to the girl who had only moments earlier been trapped in the burning building. The teachers, some of whom were still reeling from the destruction of their school, watched as the students interacted with the dogs, their expressions shifting from disbelief to gratitude. The atmosphere of panic that had once filled the air was now replaced by quiet admiration and relief. One of the older teachers, her skin a deep violet color, stepped forward. She too knelt before the dogs, her eyes filled with tears of gratitude. "We are forever in your debt," she said softly, her voice trembling. "You saved our lives." Max glanced around at the other dogs, feeling a strange sense of pride swell within him. It wasn't just the act of saving the students that filled him with this feeling, but the realization that he and his pack were no longer viewed as just pets or companions. They were protectors now, capable of making a difference on a grander scale than they had ever imagined. The students, now comforted by the presence of the dogs, began to laugh softly, their fear melting away. Duke stood proudly, wagging his tail as a few young Xenians ran to him, wrapping their arms around his strong body. Coco, normally reserved, found herself surrounded by a group of children who marveled at her speed and grace, while Shadow maintained his quiet watch from the edges, ensuring that the chaos was truly over. As the flames died down and the rescue team completed their work, a Xenian elder arrived at the scene. His robes billowed gently in the wind, and his glowing white eyes gave him an air of wisdom and authority. He spoke with the leader of the rescue team, who explained the situation and detailed the dog's role in saving the students. The elder nodded solemnly, his eyes flicking toward the dogs with a deep respect. "This act of bravery cannot go unrecognized," he said. "These dogs have shown the heart of true heroes." A few days after the incident at the school, word of the dogs' heroic actions had spread throughout the city, reaching even the highest levels of Xenian society. The Xenian Council, the planet's most prestigious governing body, had taken notice. Stories of the dogs saving dozens of students and teachers had been told and retold, and it wasn't long before the council decided to honor them in a special ceremony. On the day of the ceremony, Max and his group were brought to the Grand Hall of the Xenian Council, a massive structure made of shimmering crystals that reflected the soft, otherworldly light of Xenon's twin moons. The dogs had never seen anything like it. The hall stretched up into the sky, with its towering pillars and intricate designs that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Inside the hall, the council members, all dressed in flowing robes that glowed with bioluminescent patterns, waited in anticipation. The room was filled with dignitaries, members of the press and representatives from both the human and Xenian communities. Everyone had gathered to witness the dogs being awarded the Medal of Bravery, one of the highest honors a Xenian could receive. But today it would be given to dogs, a fact that had stirred much discussion among the citizens of Xenon. As Max, Bella, Duke, Coco and Shadow entered the hall, there was a murmur of admiration and respect. The dogs, dressed in ceremonial sashes provided by the humans, walked down the long aisle with their heads held high, their expressions calm and composed. They had been through a lot together, and today they were being recognized for something that none of them had ever imagined. The head of the council, a tall Xenian with skin that shimmered like liquid silver, stepped forward. His glowing eyes scanned the audience before settling on the dogs. "Today we gather not just to honor acts of courage," he began, his voice strong and clear, "but to recognize that bravery and heroism can come from unexpected places. The dogs before us, Max, Bella, Duke, Coco and Shadow, demonstrated an unparalleled sense of duty and courage when they risked their lives to save our students and teachers. It is because of their quick thinking and selflessness that no lives were lost that day. The council leader gestured for the dogs to step forward, and one by one each was presented with the Medal of Bravery. The medals, crafted from rare Xenon crystals, sparkled in the dim light of the grand hall. Max, standing tall, accepted his medal with quiet dignity. Bella, ever the optimist, wagged her tail excitedly, while Duke stood proudly, his chest puffed out. Coco and Shadow accepted their medals with grace, their eyes reflecting the light of the crystals. Then came the moment that the entire room had been waiting for. Max, as the leader of the group, was invited to speak. He stepped forward, his keen eyes scanning the room before he began to speak. "We are honored to receive this recognition," Max said, his voice steady and calm. "But the real honor for us was in being able to help. On that day, we didn't think about medals or ceremonies. We only thought about the lives that needed saving. Whether it's humans or Xenians, we dogs will always be here to help, no matter what the future holds." The room erupted in applause. Max glanced back at his group, and they all shared a moment of quiet pride. This was more than just a medal ceremony. It was a symbol of the bond between the species on Xenon, a bond that would only grow stronger. As the applause continued, the council leader smiled warmly. "These dogs have shown us that heroism knows no bounds, and with their bravery, they have become symbols of unity on Xenon." With that, the ceremony ended, but the legacy of that day would live on forever. In the days following the medal ceremony, the heroic acts of the dogs spread like wildfire across Xenon. News outlets, both human and Xenian, were filled with stories about the group of 5 dogs who had saved countless lives. Footage of Max's powerful speech during the ceremony played on every screen, with people commenting on how composed and thoughtful the dogs had become since receiving the implant. What had started as an invention meant to help dogs communicate had now become something far greater. The dogs were no longer just companions to humans or curious pets in the eyes of the Xenians. They had become an integral part of the planet's safety and protection. The people of Xenon, both human and alien, began to reevaluate their understanding of the dogs. The lines between pet, companion, and protector had blurred, and now conversations about the role of these intelligent animals became a frequent topic in council meetings and community discussions. The dogs' contribution in saving lives had elevated their status in society, and it was clear to everyone that their abilities could no longer be ignored. In response to the growing appreciation for the dogs' intelligence and bravery, the Xenian Council and human leaders began working together on new initiatives. They proposed forming a joint emergency response unit that included both human and Xenian rescue teams, along with the newly intelligent dogs. The goal was simple: to ensure that the dogs' incredible abilities could be harnessed for future crises. A few weeks after the school rescue, the council invited Max, Bella, Duke, Coco, and Shadow to participate in a demonstration for this new emergency unit. Held at the Xenian capital, the demonstration was designed to show how the dogs could work seamlessly alongside rescue teams to handle various disasters. When the day of the demonstration arrived, crowds of humans and Xenians alike gathered to watch. The demonstration area had been set up to simulate different disaster scenarios: a collapsed building, a flooded area, and a dangerous terrain filled with obstacles. The crowds buzzed with anticipation, eager to see what the dogs were capable of. Max, leading the group as usual, stood tall at the front. Behind him were Bella, Duke, Coco, and Shadow, each one of them focused and prepared. The simulated collapsed building resembled the scene they had faced at the school, and it didn't take long for the dogs to leap into action. With Max's leadership, Bella's gentle guidance, Duke's strength, Coco's speed, and Shadow's precise observation, the group worked together flawlessly, guiding rescuers and pulling dummies from the wreckage. Cheers erupted from the audience as they watched the dogs perform. Their teamwork, intelligence, and bravery were undeniable. Max's group had proven once again that they were more than capable of handling dangerous situations, and doing so with remarkable efficiency. After the demonstration, the Xenian Council leader approached Max and his team. His expression was one of respect and gratitude. "You have shown us today that there is much more to your kind than we ever anticipated," he said. "It is clear that moving forward, you will play an essential role in protecting Xenon and all who live here." The council leader then turned to address the crowd. "Let this day mark the beginning of a new era, one where humans, Xenians, and dogs stand side by side, united in our efforts to create a safer and more harmonious world." The announcement was met with thunderous applause. As Max stood beside his team, looking out over the cheering crowd, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had come a long way since the implant had first given them the ability to communicate. Now they weren't just animals living on Xenon, they were protectors, working with both humans and Xenians to safeguard their shared world. That evening, after the crowds had dispersed and the celebration had come to an end, Max, Bella, Duke, Coco, and Shadow found themselves back at their usual spot, the quiet park where they often met under the shade of the great crystalline tree. It was their place of reflection, where they had once gathered to talk about their humans, their new intelligence, and the strange questions that had come with it. But now, as they sat together, there was a sense that things had changed. Max, who had always been the quiet leader, lay stretched out under the tree, his keen eyes scanning the horizon. The city lights of Xenon twinkled in the distance, and the twin moons hung low in the sky, casting their soft glow over the park. Beside him, Bella sat quietly, her golden fur catching the light, her expression thoughtful. "We've come a long way," Max said, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but there was a sense of pride behind it. Bella nodded, her eyes filled with a quiet wisdom. "I never imagined we'd be here, standing in front of crowds, working with the council, saving lives." She paused for a moment, her tail swishing gently. "Do you think this is what we were always meant to do?" Duke, ever the bold one, let out a low growl of approval. "Of course. We've always had it in us. We're not just pets. We've got strength, intelligence, and now everyone knows it." Coco, who had been quietly observing the night sky, turned her gaze toward the group. "It's strange, isn't it? How we used to be content just chasing sticks and waiting for dinner. Now it feels like we're part of something bigger." Shadow, the ever-watchful guardian, sat slightly apart from the group, his dark fur blending into the shadows of the tree. He spoke rarely, but when he did, it was always with meaning. "We're no longer just companions," he said, his deep voice calm but certain. "We've become more than that. We've earned our place in this world, and I don't think there's any going back." Max considered Shadow's words for a moment, his mind wandering back to the day of the meteorite strike. It had been instinct that had driven them to run toward the school, but it was their intelligence and their bond as a group that had allowed them to save so many lives. And now that bond had evolved into something even stronger. They weren't just a pack of dogs, they were heroes, protectors, and symbols of hope for humans and Xenians alike. "I think you're right," Max finally said, his voice thoughtful. "We've earned our place and we've shown that we can make a difference. But this is just the beginning. There will be more challenges ahead, and when those challenges come, we'll be ready." The group sat in comfortable silence for a while, each one of them reflecting on how much their lives had changed. The park, with its softly glowing plants and the distant hum of the city, felt like a place of peace, a moment of calm before whatever came next. After a while, Bella stood and stretched, her golden fur gleaming in the moonlight. "Whatever the future holds," she said with a smile, "I'm just glad we're in it together." The other dogs nodded in agreement. As the night deepened and the stars twinkled above, the group of 5 dogs, the heroes of Xenon, settled in under the great crystalline tree, ready for whatever challenges awaited them in the days to come.